So we've had CPI and it didn't cripple the market, but it also didn't pump the market. But even though everyone's watching the macro side of it and Bitcoin, there has been a little bit of news regarding altcoin ETFs that have been bubbling up in the background. Now, this could actually be the catalyst to make altcoins finally do something, but I'm not that optimistic just yet. So let's break it down, let's see what's happening and go through these news events, and more importantly, let's talk about CPI too. Now let me know if you are still holding altcoins and if you do believe that this may be the catalyst to allow volume to come in. Oh, and like the video please. So the first thing which we were looking at was obviously the CPI. It rose a little bit, but not as mental as what was expected. It only rose by 0.1%, where the prediction was 0.2. Food prices rose again, which is a bit irritating, but eggs actually became cheaper. There you go. There's your headline. Eggs are cheaper. And yeah, year on year, 2.4. Core CPI 0.1, which is good because it hasn't given us that kind of situation where, well, arguably you could argue, you know, tariffs could have created a bit of a bloat on the inflation, and that hasn't happened. So that's good. But now when we talk about this, because of this data, it actually has increased potential that rate cuts could happen in September. Not in June, but September. Bear in mind, June is the last one until September. There isn't one in July and August, so just be mindful of that. Now, in terms of the market reaction for that, it actually has been, I would say, negative at the minute, but ultimately we are still in a okay trend, so to speak. It's not the best. I will say that it's wishy-washy, but at the end of the day, it's interesting because we haven't fallen off a cliff, right? Stocks dropped a little bit, nothing crazy. Bonds did rally, the dollar dropped, and Bitcoin's just kind of retracing its move from the other day. So it's not terrible. It has held up, down a little bit on the day. Ethereum down a little bit, but we are still in that breakout territory, which is important. But what I will say is this, there is no fear in the macro side of it, which is fantastic to see. And yeah, structure overall has been holding up. And even when we look at the Ethereum BTC chart, we are still here, which I know isn't looking great, but this is a month of sideways consolidation. Breakout territory? Maybe. Now, we go back in time to January 2024 because we are going to talk about ETF. Anyways, moving on. With this was when it was all kind of announced and we kind of went boom, bang, right? Now, the volume on the ETF for Bitcoin, I alluded to it in the previous video, it's the best. It's created the most amount of revenue in terms of like how much is in it faster than any other ETF on the planet, right? That's an important factor. What happened was we rallied from $45,000 to $110,000. That's pretty much a 2x very, very quickly. And that was just the start of it realistically and where we are right now. Where we are right now, I'll be honest with you, is pretty frightening to think that we are still climbing and still doing well. My biggest issue with all of this, in a way, has been it's too isolated Bitcoin, if that makes sense, i.e. there's only a Bitcoin ETF that's really pumping because the Ethereum one hasn't done it yet. I will talk about that in a bit. But when we talk about ETFs and volume and the likes of, I don't know, maybe other ones such as Solana, maybe Cardano, whatever, they may well create a little bit of retail interest, but maybe not amazing just yet. But it is a catalyst, so to speak. Because this is what the headlines are. ETF, altcoin summer, alt season summer, all that kind of stuff based around Bloomberg ETF experts have raised the odds quite significantly for a lot of cryptocurrency ETFs, such as Litecoin, such as Solana, even the likes of Cardano and other assets, which is pretty fucking big. Now, when we talk about this, and I know I've said it before, and it really infuriates me how this has changed so much in the market, and it has made it harder. For altcoins, it has been hard. There's been no proper bull cycle for alt season, so to speak, since 2021. There's mini cyclical bounces on narratives, such as 2023 into 2024, and the end of last year. They've been okay, but not big enough to satisfy the hunger, and people get very much pissy. When we talk about that, this could be the catalyst. So when we talk about the odds of increase, that's huge. For example, Cardano's have improved from 41% to 64% in the past month. Even the likes of AVAX, SUI and stuff that have been potentially mentioned. So that is pretty big. But as I've alluded to it, we talk about stuff like this. 90% now for Solana, which is pretty fucking big. So stuff like that is pretty, interesting to keep an eye on. And Solana is probably the next best one, realistically, to just go in there. But as I say, do we look at this in terms of the long term? But the one thing I will say, the ETF for Ethereum is slowly starting to bubble now. That's a good point. Whether this continues, I don't know. It has been underwhelming. I will say that now. It has been very underwhelming. But realistically, now it's starting to grow. But what happens when we have more ETFs? And when we talk about ETFs, we've got to talk about the NASDAQ has filed for an Form 8K with the SEC proposing a change in the hashtags NASDAQ Crypto Index ETF. So basically, they want to make an index. And certain things around changing things based off what the SEC wants is pretty interesting. We've seen that before in the past. We're looking for a decision on this by November the 2nd. It's giving you 2017 vibes, isn't it? So we'll see what happens here. We'll see if there is going to be an index of multiple assets, 9 at the minute. Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Cardano, Stellar Lumens, Chainlink, Litecoin, and Uniswap currently. This would be very interesting. Now, how would it work? It would be just like a retail-y sort of thing where it is cash like the other ones. You buy into it, you get said token index, value, and it'll be an index of all of them combined. If they perform, it goes up. If it does shit, it goes down. But as I've alluded to it, the Ethereum chart, this one, is the altcoin trigger, so to speak. Whether that is the bottom or not, I don't know. And that's what's infuriating. We talk about bullish news, bearish news, whatever, flip-flop, woohoo, aha. We're talking about news and speculation. We are, for the first time in a long while, retesting the EMA 21 on the weekly time frame on the BTC pair of Ethereum. That is important. We are also retesting almost the 50% mark on the RSI, which is also important. But dominance is still rising a Bitcoin. That's the big problem here. We need that to change, and the inflows need to improve. We need more and more people to buy it. Technically, you could argue, yes, it's broken resistance levels at certain points, but it needs to remain and continue going north. Whether that does or not, I don't know. So yeah, we are mirroring that November sort of behavior, but we don't want to, where we kind of bounced, but we rejected that level. We don't want that to happen again. And you could argue, talk about the USD pairs and stuff. This has got zero clear direction right now. It's had a break. It's pulled up, broken down, and it's going up again. We need to break some levels of key structure and hold these regions and then go north. It looks like a dog's dinner. But in terms of the macro outlook or the whole data as a collective, are we looking at an ETF-based summer for altcoins? There is potential. That doesn't mean buy into it off the presumption of it. It's still highly speculative. But why this cycle is different to every other is this. The dominance has been a lot bigger in terms of days rising. It has really just carried on going. 400, 500 plus days more than the previous cycles, which we haven't had that kind of, that hunger satisfying hunger, so to speak, of we've been fed from altcoins, which is why it's been a lot harder and the fatigue has kicked in. So we'll see where things go. The downside to all this is, will they get, volume? Will they get interest if they do come online? But if they don't come online, is that it? Does that mean we're going to get no altcoin cycle, so to speak? Because that's another situation we've got to look at, because Bitcoin can't keep going up forever. Bitcoin is pulling everything up, realistically. It's $107,000. And it's remaining there. That's crazy. So what am I doing? You're probably wondering. Well, I'm just waiting and seeing what's going to happen. I'm waiting for the trend to confirm on the daily time frame for a lot of things. And I'm hopefully going to get some nice little trades on big moves where I'm holding for months. The problem is we haven't had that period of time where we can do that. We've had it before in the past at the end of last year where we could hold for a bit and then we could hold as short for a bit, for example, on Chainlink. But right now it's very much, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We could argue this is probably going to go potentially back down to these levels if we do not get a volume surge. So we need to be kind of nimble here. I will be documenting this on my Patreon, as you know. If you want to follow what I do on the trading market, you can. But ultimately, right now, it's a hard market to trade, and you do not want to get caught out in the emotions of speculation because you could get really burned, especially if they reject stuff. And there we go. Feel free to drop a comment what altcoin you're excited about this summer, but ultimately there's a lot of jeopardy here that could be brilliant or could be disastrous. So hopefully it helps in one way or another. Leave a like if you enjoyed this sort of stuff, and yeah, I'll be back at some point. Don't know when, but we'll talk about other stuff then.